all questions are welcome, by the way. So to work with the birds at this level, bird banders, biologists, whatever, they need to be able to be licensed, basically. So as a falconer, I would serve a 3-year apprenticeship, and then there's a lot of, the birds are federally protected, so need to be both state and federally licensed. And for the first 3 years, need to belong to an organization so that you can be kind of monitored as to how your handling techniques are and such. Adaptations, the eyes, take up about 2/3 of the bird's head. They're rather barrel-shaped, so the eyes will almost touch on the inside of the skull. The optic nerve that hooks the two eyes together and goes into the brain allows the bird, with this close proximity, to be able to receive, custodians have to clean that up. It allows the birds to see frames per second faster than we do. We see action in frames of 25, no more than 30 frames per second. If you were to speed that up, it would look like an old film where everybody's walking around herky-jerky. Birds of prey can see in 80 frames per second. So what seems to us as a blur, they're able to see very clearly.
Anyone know who's teaching in this room?
What's this on my floor?
Yeah, just squirrel. They'll do some plucking, taking the feathers or the fur off of the meat, but mostly they'll eat all of it. They need the whole animal in order for their digestion to work right. That which doesn't get digested, they have two stomachs, a crop and a stomach. So they're able to land on the ground, seize what they need to, tear it off into larger pieces generally, wolf it down, and then get back off of the ground because they're vulnerable once they're down on the ground.
Well, okay, so clearly they don't just have to eat live prey. Do they?
Clearly they what?
They don't just have to eat live prey.
So yeah, they eat pretty much live prey.
Okay.
This will all go down in one piece in a moment.
Okay. Getting that video, right?
Pretty much it's all live prey. When a raptor is extremely starving, then it might go down and eat off of carrion or whatever, but it's always preferred to use live prey. So I use squirrel and rabbit and natural foods like that.
There it goes.
And there it goes. That's it. That's all of it, down the hatch.
Are we in danger of other things being emitted from the bird?
Always, yes. What goes in kind of does come out.
That.
And right now, the barrel's kind of like pointed right to me. Which is why we need to turn.
I'm glad I'm 3 rows back.
Turn. Good girl, good girl.
Are we gonna see
now we're just going to squirt the phone. Okay. So.
They don't need a phone.
I mentioned the eyes. They go into a kind of a lizard-like head. There are suborbital ridges above the bird's eyes that make it look angry, but they are guards for the bird as it's flying through the bushes and through the branches and such. Those suborbital ridges help protect the eyes, which is the main sense of the bird. And every now and then you'll see a clear, it's almost instantaneous, a nictitating membrane that flashes and keeps the eye both hydrated and protected when it's flying through brush such as that. The beak is one of the characteristics that all the raptors have, owls and such, where it is just like one large tooth with a point on the front, and for tearing meat loose. The beak is made of keratin, which is the same stuff that our fingernails are made of, which is the same stuff that the feathers are made of, and the same stuff that the scales on the legs are made of. The feet sport talons or claws that are extremely large and sharp. And two toes in particular have a high degree of tendon to muscle control, where the bird, when it lands on something, it kneads it like bread and kind of punctures it many times, and that's how it usually kills it. And then the beak is a kind of a supplementary thing where it starts tearing pieces loose. Let's see, eyes, beak, feathers. There's about 5 different kinds of feathers on the bird, ranging from the very soft little down feathers to the contour feathers that are just like shingles or scales, flight feathers, which are the primaries.
Oh, yeah.
And the tail feather, which is kind of like a rudder. The tail length depends on what the bird feeds on as to what its length is. A bird with a longer tail, like what Indy has here, is used in steering, so the bird is able to turn on a dime in order to stay on track of the game that it hunts, which in her area would be jackrabbits and roadrunners, quail, things that are quite quick, that dash from one clump of cactus to another. Falcons, which are the fastest raptors, have a very short tail, have very hard-packed feathers where you could never see the soft feathers really sticking out. And that's to allow the bird to be able to dive through the air at speeds of greater than 200 miles an hour. Whereas when they see their prey, they will ring up, we call it, up quite high above their prey, and then start coming down. And then when the ducks, let's say, flush, then they go into kind of a bullet and dive down and use that back talon to just strafe the bird out of the air. And it's just like hitting it with a shotgun. Feathers go flying everywhere. It's pretty dramatic. For falconry, we teach the birds using small steps to be used to us, come to us to a call, both verbal and a whistle. I didn't bring very much furniture with me, which is the training implements and such that we use. A lure is used. Sometimes the birds will catch a thermal and go very high up, so a call or a whistle won't work in bringing the bird back to me. So I'll have a small leather disc that kind of simulates an animal, and the bird is fed off of this for a period of time before we actually go out hunting. And that is the visual. So if the winds are loud, that's called rousing. That means she's thinks that you guys are pretty cool. So if it's windy out or the bird is up real high, I can use a visual device to always call the bird back, because as I mentioned, the vision is so good. We put leather bracelets, we call them anklets, on the bird. Straps of different types called jesses hang on to the bird, and then we've got like a leash with usually some swivels in there, so when the bird's swiveling around, he doesn't get everything all tangled up. Training of the bird for hunting purposes, for falconry purposes, generally takes about 2 months, 2.5 months, and then we take the bird out and release it, and then we begin hunting in cooperation. So the bird will follow me, and I'll go out to a field, release the bird. I'll aim it towards a tree or something like that, and the bird will go off to that, and then I'll go through the field and try to drum up some game for the bird to chase down. I train the birds to a dog, so everybody is like part of a team. One of my dogs is very good at tracking rabbits and is good with the birds as well. So we train them all together, so it's like the hawk dog, and you got the nose, you've got the eyes, and you've got the brains to put the team together. And then we try to rack up enough food for the hawk throughout the winter so that I can freeze it, and then as I used it today, use it when we are not hunting or during the summer when I have the birds, and kind of take them offline. We only use the birds generally during the hunting season, which is like the beginning of September around to the end of March. At that period is when rabbits and such are having babies, and it's just not that ethical to be hunting other animals when they're trying to reproduce and make more for the following year. Questions?
Sounds. What did I hear a chirp?
Yeah, there's chirps and squeals and squeaks and cries of anger, when they get a little overly excited. Generally, we trap the birds. Passage birds are the first year birds, and a falconer will trap a passage bird. We can tell by the coloring and such. And let's say a red tail. We have different types of ways of trapping the birds. And then we'll register the bird. They all get bands, and that's registered just like, you know, I have a license. The bird also has license and paperwork that needs to be carried with it wherever I go, especially if I go across state lines or something like that to do some hunting. Takes about 2 months to train them, and generally we go out and just start hunting. What was the question?
Oh, I was just asking about like the sound.
Oh, the sounds, yeah. The sound that you always hear on movies, like the hawk in the background, is always the red tail. Mostly the other birds don't make a sound unless they have to make a sound. And when raising the birds, we need to raise them in a certain way so that they don't become vocal, I guess. Once a bird gets vocal in wanting food or something, then it always is like that. Screams all the time. Call them screamers.
Wouldn't it scare away?
It's a terrible bird. It does scare away game, yeah. So it's not very conducive to hunt with a bird like that. But things like this is what we've learned as we've, you know, involved ourselves with the birds and taken on the commitment, you know, to do what it takes to keep the birds healthy and kind of psychologically healthy as well.
It's funny just watching the bird track.
It'll track everything, yeah. They're incredible.
I was just wondering, you said she was like 5 months?
5 months old.
Is she full-sized now?
When birds are out of the nest and flying on their own, they're full-sized.
So she won't get bigger than
No, that's about it, yeah. She weighs 1,012 grams, which leads me into another thing is the birds that we handle are weighed every day. So we know right to the gram, right to the 10th of a gram, how much the bird weighs. And the food that we put into the birds is weighed every day. And sometimes we'll keep a chart on if we're feeding a period of rabbit or squirrel or pigeon or duck or turkey, something along those lines, so that we can monitor the bird's metabolism, how fast it burns that amount of food up in a given amount of time. Different birds seem to burn different foods differently. So that's how we always keep the bird at a constant health, you know.
How long do they usually live?
If no one shoots them, or they don't get electrocuted on wires or hit by cars or all the millions of other things that take them out, about 20 years. Quite a while, actually. But there's so many dangers out there. The hawk will fly down and grab a rabbit, and the rabbit will scream its last screams, you know, ah, ah, and the bird will finish killing it off. And as it's eating it, every fox, coyote, and other hawk in the area hears those screams and says, oh, geez, that's great, let's go. You know, something's dying, you know, it's good news. So they try to, you know, come in on and take advantage of the hawk and its meal, maybe eat both things if it's a fox or a coyote. So that kind of ends their life kind of quickly. But keeping it in a falconry sense and trying to keep it away from heavy traffic, electric power lines and things like that, we can keep the birds going for quite a while. What falconers often do is, as I mentioned, we'll trap a first-year bird, train it up, hunt with it for a year or maybe just a season, and then let it go in the summer. Then we don't have to worry about the bird anymore. Or we may keep it 2 or 3 years if it's an especially good hunter. And then when the bird begins showing signs of courtship and, you know, trying to like hump your arm and stuff, then it's about time to release the bird into the wild and let it fill its niche. And when we keep the birds, we use them in a hunting sense. So we'll usually go out and hunt something and leave them on the kill in a good area, and then just simply, you know, cut the equipment off and then walk away. And the bird just, you know,